All right, welcome back to the final installment of assembling your lesser magistrate system. So what we're going to do here is put together one of the triggers. So the things you'll need for this section here is the PCB for the trigger itself. These are the long skinny ones. You'll need one of these tactile switches. Makes a nice clicky sound. And then you'll also need more of these RJ11 ports here. And these are the only two electrical elements that are going to get attached to the board. And then in terms of the plastic, the encasing around it, is you'll need one of these little tiny plastic stabilizers. You'll need the barrel for the actual trigger, and then the cap that's going to get put on top of it as well. For assembling that, you're going to need one of these screwdrivers. I forget which number of screwdriver this is. I think this might be a Phillips number 1 or a number 2. Anyway, it's a small one. And you are going to want to, it doesn't need to be quite as long as the screwdriver is, but you are going to need it to be probably at least, an inch or two long to really be able to get it. You're going to need to thread it inside this hole to screw something down. So you'll need more than just a bit to be able to actually accomplish this. And then it's also incredibly helpful if the tip is magnetic. If the tip of your screwdriver is not magnetic, like if it can't actually hold the screw on like that, you're going to have a real rough time with this. So get yourself a nice magnetic Phillips screwdriver here. Some things that will be helpful for assembling this is, just some Elmer's glue, some kind of really simple adhesive. You'll see where this gets used in a little bit. Not strictly necessary, but helps, again, it helps an awful lot with the assembly. And then finally, if you're able to 3D print the parts yourself, there are these two assembly jigs here. This is an anvil and a ram for getting the cap onto the trigger, which again, you'll see me use this in a minute. Not strictly necessary, but if you're putting together like 100 of these things, it's, again, really nice. And then in terms of soldering, I got my soldering iron here, which is already heating up. And then I got I've, since the last set of videos, I've invested in one of these fume extractor fans. This Hako FA 400. There's lots of equivalents to these things, a smoke absorber. I'd really recommend getting one of these if you're doing a lot of soldering, because even if you get the lead-free solder, the fumes are still not super great for your lungs. Again, probably not a big deal if you're putting one of them together, but if you're doing any kind of serious assembly, you'll probably want some fume extraction with it. Anyway, so I'll go ahead and put together the first of these where I don't use any of the jigs or anything like that, so that you can sort of see how the process goes. And then I'll do another one where you can actually see a little bit of how the jigs end up being helpful. So for this it's, again, usually with these boards, you want to go from the shortest element to the tallest. So you'll start with one of these tactile switches right here. So the tactile switch goes on the end where the contacts are close by. And so you can just thread that thing right on. And then you'll want to kind of press it to make sure it seats nicely. It'll make kind of a nice satisfying click. Maybe you can hear that coming through the video when it actually seats into place. And then you'll see that there's no gap. Let me hold that up a little bit closer. There's no light gap here between the board and the component itself. And so then, you'll just solder this in place by just putting your two solder joints here. You don't need to do any solder for the mechanical connectors, only the two connectors on the top here. So let's go ahead and get those soldered in place. Yeah, and you can be a little generous with the solder on these. It definitely won't hurt anything. So with that in place, you can then flip this over. And now we'll put the RJ11 in place here as well. So same as before, you're going to want to get it, seat it in place. And then for these, same thing. You'll want to make sure that, when you plug it in, it looks like this one, the clips have been a little bit damaged on it. So it's not going to sit nicely in just by itself. But you're going to want to get it in place and, again, make sure it's seated properly. So I'll probably do a two-phaser here where I'll get one of the joints in and then I'll hold the port in when I let the solder solidify to make sure then to use the solder to sort of hold it in place. So we'll go ahead and give that a try here. So I don't know if you saw that in the middle there where I put the solder on the bottom joint, and then I picked the whole thing up and applied a little bit of back pressure with my finger and got the solder liquid again so that the piece would fully seat against the board there. So then when it solidified, I let go, and now, the board's held in there nice, or the connector's held in there nicely. So that's what this looks like. I'll go ahead and do another one of these so you can kind of see the process again. And one of the things I'll point out this time, as I'm just kind of working through the steps here, is these are really easy to assembly line. You can get probably 20 of these boards all at once, and then you just grab all of them and add tactile, 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 and then you can stack them right next to each other on the table, and they seat really closely, and then you can kind of just go down the line with your soldering iron and get them all in one go. And again, this is helpful if you do one component at a time. Then all of the boards will be at the same height. So there you go. There's another board done. And again, this one also looks like it has a damaged connectors, these plastic pieces right here damaged, which is why I had to hold it in place, make sure everything's seated properly. All right, so now that we have two of these, you can see how the trigger assembly itself works. So hopefully if you can look down the length of the barrel, hopefully you can see there's a little, so in addition to the square on the bottom, there's actually a little bit of a lip right here. Let me see if I can... I'm not sure how well this is coming through on the video, but oh yeah, there you can see it just in silhouette there. You can see there's this piece that's sticking out here. What that piece is doing is it's coming up to when you stick the board into the barrel here. That plastic piece is coming up to support the bottom of it, and then it actually has a hole in it, which again maybe you can see right here. So there's a large hole on one side, and then there's a tiny hole on the other side, which a screw is actually going to thread into. And so the idea is that when your board comes into place here inside of the barrel, you're then able to fit a screw through the top large hole of this barrel here, and then it will thread through and hold the board against that post that's in the bottom inside the barrel there. And that's all good and dandy. But one of the things I did when I was designing these is I was a little bit worried about people putting pretty excessive force on these tactile switches, and then getting snapped off on the boards. So I actually designed these little stabilizer pieces, and what these do is, again, maybe it's not coming through on the video super well, but there's a hole that goes through this, and actually a small counterbore that when the screw piece actually comes in, so that the screw kind of sits nice and flat inside of there, and so what these do is kind of dual purpose. So one, they're a little bit of a spacer, so that the screw doesn't stick out through the bottom of the barrel. But the other thing that this does is you'll notice it's got a little nib on the end right there, and that slots up up underneath the tactile switch there. So when the whole thing is screwed together, the tactile switch actually has a little bit of mechanical support here. And when they're actually screwed down, you don't always get like contact to it. But again, my idea was that if someone's really ramming down on this thing, there is a little bit of a hard stop that will prevent this just from snapping off inside the barrel. In hindsight, I'm not sure these are actually super important mechanically, but we already have the screw lengths for them, and so you kind of have to put them in. Otherwise, the screw will stick out of the bottom. Probably in a future version of the trigger, I'll design it so that you don't need one of these fiddly little pieces. But anyway, this is the design that we have right now. So it's got one of these stabilizing pieces. So it does bring in. So the way that you kind of have to get these things inside is you need the stabilizer piece to be on top of the board. you then need to thread the board into the barrel and get it over top of that little post that's in there. And then you need to get the screw through the hole and kind of thread the needle and screw the thing tight. And I will say probably the first 10 of these that you do, it's going to be pretty frustrating. It is, again, the design, I think, needs a little bit of work to be user-friendly. But, once you've done 10 or 20 of these things, you kind of get a feel for how to actually get everything threaded through. And so, again, if you're only building one of these units, I just recommend you kind of suffer through. And sorry. But if you're doing a big manufacturing run, know that it does get a lot easier after you've done some of these. So I'll show you, I'll take the stabilizer piece off here first and just kind of show you a little bit about how the thing threads together. So the big issue with it threading in place is that the bottom of this RJ11 has these two leads that stick out from the bottom of the board. And those leads need to get over top of that post right there. But you don't want to just kind of like ram it down through, or you want to be a little careful ramming it through because you don't want to like break the solder joint that you just made there. And so there is just barely enough space that if you take the board and press it all the way against the other side of the barrel and kind of tilt a little bit, you can kind of, the motion is you sort of thread it over the top like that. And if you kind of do that sort of motion, and I got to hold it here so I can get some tension on it. But I'm doing, exaggerated. I'm doing this to get it over top of that little post there. And if you do that, then it, slides nicely into place. And the other thing is that you then need to thread it so that the port actually sticks through the square at the bottom. Sometimes it'll get jammed there. I'm not sure I'm not sure how easy that is to see on the video there. But the port is not seated all the way. But if I kind of jiggle a little bit, I can force it so that it does in fact sit all the way down. And that's important so that, let me get a little bit of white contrast here, so that let me get this up here. Not sure if we'll be able to see that. See if that's coming through. It's a little hard to see on the camera. Oh, there we go. Yeah, you can see. So if you look carefully down the hole, you can see all three of those holes are lined up, and you can kind of see the white paper behind it. But if the board is off a little bit, then the little white light goes away. And again, it's a little easier to see in person here. So that's sort of the idea for how you get the board into place. And then you can kind of do the reverse of sort of worry it over the top. So the idea is you got to get the stabilizer to sit on top, worry the board into place, and then you're going to drop the screw in and screw it through, or you're going to lower the screw in on the magnetic tip of your screwdriver and screw it into place. And the thing that I found is this is where the Elmer's glue is really helpful. If you just put a little dab of Elmer's glue on the board here, it does a lot to just kind of hold that, keep that stabilizer in place a little bit while you're worrying the board in. And I mean, the glue doesn't do anything for the mechanical stability of it after you screw the thing together. It's like, the screw is providing, it's the screw and the pressure is providing all the mechanical support there. But the glue is really helpful for just holding the stabilizer to the board while you're trying to get the thing assembled. And so, yeah, like I was saying, it's, you just get a little dab of glue on it. It doesn't take very much. And then get it into place. And then I like to smash it down. You can see the glue is kind of goobering out there a little bit, but yeah. And once it's in place, it just is that little bit of provide that, just a little bit of resistance to the thing getting jostled out of the way. And again, this is like, there's a little bit of finesse here. It takes a little bit of work. It takes a little bit of practice to get it, but once you got the board in place, then your stabilizer, you can slot it in. And then again, I can see it. I don't think it's coming through on the camera, but I can see looking through that, now all of those holes are lined up, and I can see the table through all of those holes there. So with that in place, then you grab your screwdriver. And again, this is where the magnetic tip is really helpful. And then you just sort of gingerly lower it down. And then once it gets through, you'll feel it bite a little bit after you twist it. And once that's in place, you're golden. You can take the screwdriver out and kind of reposition. And, then from here, it requires a fair amount of downward of pressure. So I'm pushing pretty hard, with one hand into the other here as I'm twisting. and to make sure that the screw actually threads into the plastic on the other side. And then what you're doing is you're just tightening it until you'll sort of feel the screw bottom out. And then you can also test that, like, if you try to jiggle the thing, like, the board doesn't rattle around anymore. The port might rattle a little bit, but the board itself should be in place, and you should get a nice satisfying click out of it, just like that. So that's sort of the idea here. Again, I'll do another one so you can sort of see the whole process. And like I was saying, same with the electrical components. This part's really easy to mass produce, where you can just line up 20 or 30 of these boards and glue all of the stabilizers into place, and then thread all of the boards into the barrels all in one go, and get them all situated. And then you can just sit it down, and it sort of weebles itself to be upright like this. And so you can leave the board like this for an indefinite amount of time. Again, like, it doesn't matter if the Elmer's glue was wet or dry at a future point. Like, it already did what it was supposed to by helping you get the board in without the stabilizer flying off somewhere. And so again, you can do like 20 of these things, and then you come in and just thread all the screws on. Let's see, I was sort of hoping I was going to mess that up so you could see that even I make mistakes putting this thing together. But anyway, yeah, it just takes a little bit of care and a little bit of practice, and then you'll be able to put all of these together with no problem. So anyway, there you go. There's your two. And actually, you can see there's the bottom of the screw that's just barely peeking. It's not actually sticking out of the barrel at all, but you can just barely see the bottom of it right there. So there's your triggers, and now everything is mechanically in place in terms of the board's secured and your ports are there and everything. And so now at this point, technically you could like plug it in and test it, but I've had essentially no problems electrically with these things. They're just so dead simple that, I mean, if the component works, the trigger is going to work. Like, nothing can really go wrong with them. And so I usually will just do the full assembly before I bother running any QA on them. But at this point, really, you could test the button to make sure that it actually works and that it does in fact trigger on one of your units with your lesser magistrates, before you actually put the cap on. Because once you get the cap on, you're probably never going to get the cap off again. Like, it essentially seals the thing, and then you're done. So the cap here, I guess I should explain. There's a slight chamfer on the barrel here, and there's a matching chamfer on the inside of this cap that kind of goes in the first maybe half centimeter or so, like that. And so those are just to help you kind of get the cap situated nicely. But you'll see it's like, it kind of slides together nicely for the first, again, maybe like centimeter or half centimeter or something. But then the cap doesn't really want to, it doesn't go nicely anymore after that. And so what you have to do at this point is just, basically force it on is the thing. So it's very intentionally a tight fit between the barrel and the cap, so that when you force the two things together, you can't really pull them apart. And so what this is, but the thing you want to be careful of is you don't just want to get it between your hands and jam it like that, because then that tactile switch will stab you in the palm, and it really kind of hurts. So, the way you can do this is, you just sort of apply some pressure to it. You can use your two thumbs or something like this to kind of get it. It's like, if you really want to, you can kind of use the fat part of your thumb, and just try to kind of push it off axis a little bit. Or even, you can kind of cup your hand a little bit so that you have a little space right there for the actual switch to come through. And got to get it off camera because it's pretty hard to do. You can hear that it's kind of laboring on it, and you can see at that point this isn't even situated all the way. So you really kind of gotta apply some pressure to this thing. See if I can actually even get it here. There we go. Yeah, so I ended up having to use the edge of the table here where, there's that, yeah. So it's, getting the button so that the button hangs off the edge, but that the cap is still on the edge here. And then, I'm just kind of twisting it a little bit and applying a, pretty aggressive downward pressure just to make sure, everything's situated. And again, one of these, like after you've done 5 of them, you'll just have a feel for knowing how far the cap is until you can't push it anymore. You can also check by just like, looking at the cross section to make sure the the button's sticking out far enough. But yeah, they should all be, it should look about like that. And then, you can give it a test to make sure that you're able to access the button, and everything's good. But yeah, with that, there's your trigger is all done. Then you can just run QA on it, make sure it actually works. But if you're, again, and this works, but actually you can probably see the indentations on my hands from when I was pressing on the bottom of it to try to get it. And, so that part right there of ramming the cap on is, it's pretty hard on your hands. So again, if you're only doing like 10 of these, not that big of a deal. Like, you just sort of suffer through and, you'll be fine. But if you're doing like 100 of these, like it really like starts to hurt your hands. And so I designed these pieces, a little ram and an anvil to help with the assembly. The most helpful one is this ram piece right here with the dome top. And this is just designed to sit kind of nicely in the palm of your hand. And then there's matching chamfers on the inside of this that match the cap. And so it just sort of, it distributes the pressure over a wider area in your hand. So it doesn't, the edges of the cap aren't digging into your palm. Number one. And then number two, there's actually a relief area right here so that once the cap situates all the way, the button doesn't interfere. Like the button won't hit that top part right there. There's an empty space in there so that you can just ram it all the way down. And so like this is the most helpful one. I also have this anvil on the bottom, which is, it can be helpful if you've got a really slippery surface. Depending on how you print it, you might have like a texture, or you can get like a piece of rubber or something. Again, the anvil is not as important, but the ram is really helpful. And so for these, again, it's like you sort of slip it onto that lead-in section, make sure the cap is all lined up nicely. But then you can take this, cap in the bottom of your hand and situate it on top. And then even if your ram, like, the chamfers are such that even if the ram isn't perfectly centered on it, you still can get, good pressure. It'll drive it in the correct direction. But yeah, you just sort of get it in your hand and then you can just kind of torque down on this thing and you feel it. And actually, I'm probably going to finish this without the anvil. There we go. So you hear that kind of click right there, and and then everything's all situated. And then you'll notice there's no new dings in my hand or anything, and I can tell you anecdotally that was way less painful than trying to get the other one in place. Yeah, and if you're doing like 50 of these, you really want something like this. So anyway, those are your pieces, and there's your 2 triggers fully assembled. And anyway, so best of luck putting everything together, and happy quizzing.